Quick review that cells divide, right? And you know that not all your cells are dividing at the same time, just the ones that need to. Like, for example, if you're growing or if you're needing to replace skin cells, right? All cells are in some phase of the cell cycle, that pie-shaped thing that we drew. But then there's that specific M phase, which is mitosis, which you learned the phase names of. Tomorrow you'll explore what those phases look like for real under the microscope. But the names of those phases are prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Now, the reason cells have to divide, in other words, the reason cells just don't keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, the reason you have the same size cells now that you did when you were a baby, the reason that an elephant has the same size cells as you, is that cells have to be small, right? They have to be small, we learned yesterday, because of the mathematics of three-dimensional objects. Small things have more surface area per amount of volume. And so a small cell has enough cell membrane to let enough stuff in and out to keep its cytoplasm alive. That's where we've been so far. Today, we're just going to talk about how your body controls cell division, because obviously it does, right? Not all your cells are dividing at the same time. Cells have to control very precisely how and when they divide. Incredibly precise, that control. You can take artificially cultured skin cells, put them in a petri dish, you know what petri dish is, right? And they will divide right up until they're one layer thick, and then they'll stop. That's how precise their chemical signaling is. And of course, you knew that because you can get a cut on your arm and it heals to where you can't even see that there was a cut there before. So the body controls cell division in several ways. We don't completely understand this process, by the way. We don't know everything about the body's control of cell division. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we divide the controls we do know into internal regulators and external regulators. So internal regulators are chemicals that sort of keep tabs on what's going on inside the cell. And they don't let that cell divide until it's ready. Those checkpoints you labeled in the cell cycle, this has to do with that. One thing we know that is an internal regulator is a family of proteins called cyclins. Cyclins are proteins that have to kind of accumulate in order for cells to get past those checkpoints in the cell cycle. Once you have enough cyclins, then you can move on to the next, say G1 or G2. External regulators are chemicals that are keeping tabs on what's going on outside the cell. This is where things like injuries come in. This is where, there's something, there's a break in the skin. Okay, turn on the external regulators to speed up the cell cycle so the cells divide faster so that we heal the cut. That kind of thing. One of the external regulators we know a lot about are growth factors. And the specific human example you might have heard of is called human growth hormone, or HGH. Which is sometimes used in professional sports as a performance-enhancing drug. All right, here is some stuff about those checkpoints. Change the sound real quick.
Is enhanced by proteins called cyclins. To activate the kinase, the cyclins bind to the flowing apart and turn phosphorylase other proteins, specifically these activated proteins move the cell cycle into its next stage. The cell cycle can't move until cyclins have built up in the cell. Once DNA replication takes place, the cyclins are degraded, but DNA can't replicate. sure that DNA isn't damaged. Make sure that the cell is vigorous enough to produce. Any part of the process isn't functioning properly, the cell cycle is arrested, won't stop replicating. In this way, the process prevents the duplication of defective cells.
So all this is to say that there's a bunch of ways that cells regulate cell division, and to also make sure that you understand that we don't know everything about how this works. And that's important because of what happens when we lose control of cell division. Yeah, so it turns out that what we think of as sort of one of the worst diseases on earth, right? Cancer, the one that like you hear it and you kind of, your stomach feels funny because it's one that we don't really have a cure for, is at its heart kind of a simple thing. It's not a disease like COVID, right? It's not a disease that you can pass from person to person. It's a genetic disorder, but it's not like most genetic disorders because it really only takes one cell. So what happens when we lose control of mitosis is cancer. It's basically cells that have simply forgotten how to stop dividing. They don't know how to regulate mitosis. So basically, you've got a cell that suddenly loses control of cell division, that doesn't know how to stop dividing, and it keeps dividing. And you know, let's say it's a cell in my skin right here somewhere that doesn't know how to stop dividing. So it keeps dividing and keeps dividing and keeps dividing. And what I get is a lump of skin cells here. And what do I call that? Tumor. That's called a tumor. And so what's sometimes hard to understand is why this is a big deal. Why is it a big deal for me to have a bunch of useless arm cells right here? Well, sure, okay, it looks weird, but I can go to the doctor and have the doctor surgically remove that lump. I should be fine, right? Or the lump grows back. Who cares? I have another arm lump. I go to the doctor again. I have it taken off. That's true to an extent. There are types of tumors that it's just that simple. It's not a big deal. They grow, you cut them off, maybe they grow again, and you're okay. That's called a benign tumor. What's the deal with the ones that are more serious than that, Kate? What do you mean they spread? So does anybody know how cancer can spread from, say, a lump on my arm to somewhere else in my body that might be a little more serious to have a useless lump of cells in?
Through your blood?
Yeah, so cancer cells kind of have this special power, at least the ones that we call malignant instead of benign, where they can actually kind of divide to where they pry apart tissues and break through into the bloodstream. And when you have useless cells breaking off into the bloodstream, that's a big deal. That your bloodstream is the transport system to any cell in your body, right? At that point, they're in the wind and they could land anywhere. So that's thing one about why they're so serious, these tumors we're talking about. Thing two is, I said, this is not like a regular disease like COVID or the flu. What's different about this useless mass of skin cells as far as my body's ability to fight it? Think about what we talked about in chapter 7 about marker proteins.
It's your own cell.
It's got all the right marker proteins. It's got all the ID tags. Remember those proteins in your cell membrane that say this is your cells? It's got all those. It's your own cells, and it's identified as such by your immune system. Your immune system isn't going to touch it. So two things that make this a huge problem are that it's your cells, as Reagan said, and that cells can break off into the bloodstream. The word we use for that, for tumor cells breaking off and entering the bloodstream or they can land anywhere, is metastasis. The tumor metastasizes. The cells break off and enter the bloodstream. And that's when things get scary. Because there are lots of places in the body where you can't tolerate a bunch of extra useless cells And that lump of cells starts prying apart tissues that you really need to survive, then you have a problem. 3 of the scarier places that tumors can land: brain, liver, pancreas. 3 very important organs. The brain, obviously, the control center of your body. Not a lot of wasted space in there. It's all important. Pancreas and liver special because they're kind of all-purpose organs. They do a lot of jobs. There's a lot of different kinds of tissues packed in there. And again, not able to withstand a lot of kind of prying apart and bumping around. We don't know everything about how cells regulate their cell division, which is why cancer still exists, right? If we understood it all, we could mess with it and fix it. Of course, that's where a lot of research is right now. I can tell you one gene that's been discovered that's clearly key in cancer cells. It's called gene P53. We know that it's key in regulating mitosis. We know that cancerous cells, most of them have defects in their P53. Those defects in P53 are actually one way that scientists are trying to get the body to target and kill cancer cells. Kind of cool research. There's a lot to know about cancer and about sort of the family of illnesses that cancer is, because it's not all one thing. And so what I want you to do today, rather than me keep talking about it, is I want you to explore it a little bit yourself. And so what's in Classroom right now is a little web quest. It's sort of a national information site on cancer and the types of cancer that there are. The ways we name cancer is a key part of this that I want you to kind of dig into. So that is posted in Classroom. There's a Google Doc in there that is where you're going to type your answers. And then the website, the URL is actually, there's a link in the sheet itself to where you can get there and find those answers. So go ahead and dig into that for the rest of the period. This will be due tomorrow. I am going to further bump the snowman competition to Thursday. Final snowmen, your creative, beautiful snowmen, hilarious, whatever you want to make them for the competition for extra credit, those are now due on Thursday. That will be the final day. I'm not going to extend that again, but just based on what's going on, I want to give you enough time if you want to do this that you can. Okay, so snowman due Thursday. This web quest due tomorrow by the beginning of class. We are currently looking at a test over chapter 10 on Friday. That's tentative. I think it'll be then. I could bump it. We'll see. Okay, any questions? All right, get to work.